Hey, it's been a while. So one of my TikTok commenters, somebody by the name of Wherever the Road Leaves, asked the question, do you have a hotel you would recommend staying at for the races? And the easy answer to that question is, yeah, I absolutely do. But there are some caveats, and there are some different things to take into account when you consider that. Now, first of all, if you don't know what runDisney is, runDisney is an arm of the Walt Disney Company that focuses on endurance run races. They've, as of this year, been doing them for 30 years, and they take place both at Disneyland in California and the Walt Disney World Resort in Florida. Now, for the last several years, that has not been happening at Disneyland, but it is coming back this year in 2023. So that's something to look forward to. As far as in Walt Disney World, the races take place 4 times a year. There's a race in January, which is the marathon weekend. There's a race called the Princess Races, which takes place in February. They have the Springtime Surprise, which happens in April. And then lastly, they have Wine and Dine, which happens at the very end of the Food and Wine Festival in November at Walt Disney World. Now, the question was, where should I stay for these races? Well, it depends on a couple of different factors. First of all, which weekend are you there for? Let's operate under the assumption that you're there for marathon weekend, whether you're looking to do Dopey or just 1 or 2 or 3 or whatever number of the races. Let's assume that's the weekend you're talking about. For me, the first question you got to ask is budget a concern for you? Because staying at a Walt Disney World resort is not exactly cheap. However, there are some inexpensive resorts, primarily the All-Star resorts, which are considered a value resort. There's 3 of them. There's All-Star Movies, All-Star Music, and All-Star Sports. I've stayed there a couple of times. They are fine resorts. They have close proximity to the ESPN facility, which is where the expo is. And they also are fairly close to Epcot and Hollywood Studios, which is where the races begin. So your bus rides in the morning, should you choose to take a bus, won't be too bad. The downside is there's a ton of people staying there. So sometimes there can be a wait in the morning for the buses. So something to keep in mind as well as getting back. Now, if budget is really not a concern for you and the most important thing for you is convenience, well, then in that case, I highly recommend both for convenience as well as if you have friends and family coming with you that are going to spectate the race, I recommend that you either stay on the monorail resort loop or you stay in the Crescent Lake area. Now, the monorail resorts, those include the Polynesian, the Grand Floridian, and the Contemporary Resort, and then adjacent to that is Bay Lake Tower, considered one campus. So those are the monorail resorts. And then over by Epcot is the Crescent Lake Resorts. Now, the Crescent Lake Resorts are the Boardwalk, the Beach and Yacht Club, and then also tangentially, you've got the Dolphin and the Swan, which are over there as well. Now, there's benefits to both. What are they, you may ask? Well, let me tell you. If you do have friends and family that are going to be visiting with you that want to spectate and cheer you on, both of those locations offer unique benefits. First of all, we're going to operate under the assumption that you're there for the marathon or at least the half marathon for the weekends. Those races run through the Magic Kingdom, the half marathon and the full. So if you're staying on the monorail loop, then your family and friends can be at the TTC, which is the Ticket and Transportation Center, and it's essentially the monorail hub. It's where the line from the TTC goes to Epcot, as well as the line that goes around the monorail resorts at Bay Lake or Seven Seas Lagoon. So they can view you when you run by there. For the half mile or the half marathon, you run by there, I believe, around mile 4, and then for the full marathon we ran by there, I believe, around mile 8 or 9, so it depends. But then they can shoot either around the monorail over to the Magic Kingdom or take the ferry if the ferry's running. I don't believe it is that early. I've never been a spectator there, so I don't know for sure. I believe they have to take the monorail, but then you run by the TTC, over by the Contemporary, and then you run in either the front gate or a side gate entrance into the Magic Kingdom, and your guests that are with you, your friends or family, can actually be on Main Street USA while you're running through there. I should, if you're watching this on one of the major video platforms, hopefully I got a video right there showing me running through Main Street USA, which is an absolutely epic experience for both spectators and for the participants. So highly, highly recommend that. So if you are staying in the Contemporary or the Grand Floridian on the monorail loop, then the race actually goes right by the resort as well. So you could literally just go out to the front gate of the resort for both of those locations, and the race goes right by for both the half and the full. If you are staying over at Crescent Lake, again, Crescent Lake being Boardwalk, Beach and Yacht Club, Dolphin and Swan, there both the 10K and the full run through that resort area. Not both on both sides. I believe there's some weird cut-throughs, but either way, depending on the race and depending on the courses, which do change from year to year, if you are staying in one of those resorts, you can just walk out the backside of the resort onto Crescent Lake and spectate, and your friends and family can watch you or cheer you as you run by. The other benefit to that as well is that if you are going to run one of these races and when you finish, Epcot's open and you want to go into Epcot, well, then you have a very easy path back out to the Crescent Lake area through the International Gateway, which is the backside entrance of Epcot. So you can go right back to your resort that way without having to worry about resort buses. One thing to keep in mind, if you do want to go into Epcot, or if your friends and family want to spectate and cheer you on from inside Epcot, you have to have a ticket and a park reservation for Epcot on the day of the race in order to enter that park. Same thing goes for all the parks, except when I spoke about the Magic Kingdom in the morning. Magic Kingdom, when the race goes through there, the park is not yet open. So they do not require a ticket or a reservation to get in there and spectate. They just remove everybody from the park before the park opens for normal operating hours. Now, there are a slew of other resorts around the Walt Disney World campus that I adore. I've stayed at the Caribbean Beach Resort for the races before. I've stayed at the Animal Kingdom Lodge for the races before. I've stayed at the Wilderness Lodge for the races. Those are all awesome resorts, but they don't offer any inherent benefit for the races other than being a fun resort and one that is less traveled by during these race weekends. Now, this year, the 2023 Dopey Challenge that I was down there for, I actually stayed at the Coronado Springs Resort because I was there as part of team and training, raising funds for the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society. That resort was fantastic. The race for the full, only the full, went by the resort on both one side of the resort and the main entrance of the resort. So my wife was out there cheering me on. She was able to walk right out of the resort and then leave from there, jump on a bus, and catch me over at Epcot. So it was a fantastic thing. Hopefully I've answered your questions. I know I've gotten a bunch of other questions about the runDisney events and how they work and how they, operate. Can you do it? Are they worth it? All that kind of stuff. I'm going to answer that in a series of videos over the coming days and weeks, as well as some additional run content. If you have any other questions about running specifically or fitness specifically, ask them to me, because I realize that the fitness space of TikTok and YouTube can both be very toxic areas, and I would like to be a better voice of wisdom, and I'm not going to try to push anybody on fads or weird complex schemes. The reality is that fitness is fitness is fitness, and there's right and wrong ways for you to live inside of that space, and we can discuss that in the coming weeks. So